A dinner for two, an amount carefully recorded in our account, appeared like a ghost among familiar transactions. I had been home, alone in our silent apartment, with nothing but the echo of solitude for company. This receipt, a seemingly mundane piece of paper, now pulsed with a hidden message, a betrayal too stark to ignore. Every digit, every printed detail, screamed of secrets kept in the shadows, secrets that would soon shatter everything I believed in. I had always prided myself on the simplicity and honesty of our life together. My wife, Rebecca, and I had shared decades of quiet routines and mutual trust, a bond woven through long evenings, soft-spoken promises, and the unwavering belief that we were each other's confidant. Our bank account was a testament to our shared dreams, a clear ledger of our daily existence that I had monitored with a sense of comfort and pride. So, when I saw that unexpected receipt, a dinner meant for two on a day I'd spent entirely by myself, it was as if a cold wind had swept through my carefully ordered world. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a mix-up at the restaurant, an accidental charge intended for someone else. I leaned in closer, scrutinizing the details, the date, the time, the total amount. Every detail was consistent with a dinner for two at La Belle Vie, a quaint restaurant we had never frequented. My heart began to race as I recalled that I had been at home that day, enjoying the solitude of a quiet afternoon with nothing to distract me. The evidence was irrefutable, this was no clerical error. I sat there, breath caught in my throat, as a chilling realization began to form, something was terribly wrong. The suspicion gnawed at me all day long. Throughout the morning and into the afternoon, I replayed every conversation, every glance Rebecca had given me. Had I missed something? Had her smile, her tone, hinted at a secret she was keeping? The memory of our shared moments, once the foundation of my happiness, now felt like a fragile illusion, ready to shatter with the slightest provocation. I recalled that recent evening when she returned home later than usual, her eyes distant and her smile forced. I remembered how her phone had vibrated repeatedly on her nightstand, and how she would quickly slide it into her purse when I walked by. These small, seemingly insignificant details began to form a pattern I had once dismissed, but which now loomed ominously over me. Unable to shake the growing dread, I resolved to investigate further. I opened our bank statement on my laptop once more, scrolling back through months of transactions in search of any anomalies that might support the horrifying possibility that my wife was living a double life. Every number, every detail, was scrutinized, and as I delved deeper, I discovered a few more inconsistencies: a charge for a taxi service late at night on a day she had claimed to be working, a dinner receipt for an extravagant meal that didn't match her usual tastes, and several small transactions at places I'd never heard her mention. My mind raced, and my heart pounded with the realization that these financial clues were threads leading to a tapestry of deceit. I felt betrayed, not only by the discovery itself but by the nagging thought that I had been so blind. The trust one had placed in our years together now felt like a cruel joke, a web of carefully spun lies that had ensnared both of us. The dinner receipt, a seemingly trivial slip in our financial records, was the spark that ignited a firestorm of suspicion. I began to imagine scenarios I had never dared to contemplate: secret rendezvous, whispered conversations behind closed doors, and a hidden life lived without me. That evening, as the shadows lengthened and the day's light faded into a deep, melancholy dusk, I resolved to confront the truth. I gathered every scrap of evidence, screenshots of the suspicious transactions, annotated bank statements, and my own frantic notes, and compiled them into a digital dossier. Each piece was a painful reminder of the betrayal that had slowly wormed its way into our seemingly perfect life. I knew that I would have to face Rebecca with these undeniable facts, but even as the prospect of confrontation loomed, I felt a crushing weight of fear and sorrow. In the solitude of our quiet home, I sat alone at my desk, the silence around me thick with the echoes of memories now tainted by deceit. I questioned everything I had ever known, every shared meal, every whispered secret, every promise made in the glow of our living room. The world I had believed in was crumbling before my eyes, and I was left to pick up the shattered fragments of a life built on trust. My journal overflowed with desperate, painful confessions of the suspicions that had become undeniable truths. As midnight approached, I stared out the window at the rain-slicked street, the drops a relentless reminder of the tears I had yet to shed. I knew that tomorrow, I would have to confront Rebecca, to demand an explanation for the receipt and the mounting evidence of a life lived without me. The thought of that confrontation filled me with a dread so deep it seemed to echo the darkness within my soul. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a spark of determination ignited, a resolve that I would not let this betrayal define me entirely, that I would face the truth head-on, even if it meant tearing apart the very fabric of our shared life. In that quiet, haunted moment, I understood that the journey ahead would be fraught with pain, heartbreak, and a relentless search for answers. But I also knew that only by confronting this hidden reality could I hope to reclaim the dignity and trust that had once been the cornerstone of our love. The dinner receipt was not merely a financial anomaly, it was a key that had unlocked a secret so profound that it threatened to shatter everything I believed in. And as I sat there in the solitude of a rain-soaked night, I vowed that I would uncover every hidden truth, no matter how painful, and that I would not rest until the lies that had poisoned our life were laid bare in the harsh light of day. In the days that followed that shocking discovery of the dinner receipt for two, when I had been home utterly alone, I found myself drowning in a relentless sea of questions and mounting suspicions. Every time I checked our shared bank account, my eyes involuntarily searched for any detail that might explain this glaring anomaly. I began to question every routine moment of our life together, the whispered good nights, the morning coffee shared at our kitchen table, the gentle smiles exchanged over dinner. What I once took as the simple rhythms of a loving marriage now appeared to be carefully orchestrated illusions. I couldn't shake the feeling that this receipt was not a one-off mistake, but a signal that something far more insidious was at work. For the first few days, I tried to convince myself that it might have been an error, a clerical mix-up at the restaurant or perhaps a misapplied charge. Yet, the more I examined the bank statements and cross-checked our schedules, the more it became clear that nothing was as it seemed. The receipt, printed in bold clarity, showed an amount and a restaurant name, La Belle Vie, a place I had never even mentioned visiting, let alone on a night when I was certain I had stayed at home. Each time I saw that receipt, my heart would race, and a cold sweat would form along my brow, as if I was suddenly forced to confront a truth that I had long feared. In an attempt to quell the growing storm of doubt, I retraced my steps meticulously. I ransacked our kitchen drawers and household files, seeking any forgotten note or receipt that might justify the charge. I even revisited our digital calendar to see if there had been a dinner plan that I had somehow forgotten. But every search led to a dead end, a blank space where I expected to find evidence of a shared plan. Instead, I found nothing but silence, a void that spoke volumes of a secret kept hidden from me. Haunted by that mysterious receipt, I began to study the patterns in our financial records. I scrolled through months of transactions with a magnifying glass on every detail. And slowly, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. There were other small discrepancies, a taxi fare on a night when Melissa claimed she was simply at home, a charge at a boutique I had never heard her mention, and even a couple of inexplicable online orders for items I didn't recognize. It was as if our bank statement had turned into a diary of secrets, each entry a silent admission of a hidden life. The dinner receipt was merely the spark that lit a fuse leading to a series of revelations that I had never anticipated. Night after night, I sat in our quiet living room, the glow of my laptop the only light in the darkness, as I compiled a digital dossier. I saved screenshots of every anomalous transaction, meticulously noting dates, times, and even the context of each charge. I began to document every little detail that didn't match the narrative I had always believed in, a life of shared routines, mutual trust, and a sense of security that I had clung to as my foundation. With each new piece of evidence, my mind spun with questions. Who was she dining with? Was there someone in our midst that I had never even suspected? Could the person behind those charges have been someone I knew, a friend, a colleague, or even a neighbor? The more I delved into the details, the more my sense of isolation deepened. I found myself retreating into a silent obsession, spending hours rereading bank statements, scanning through text messages, and even reviewing our home security footage, anything that might offer a clue to unravel this mystery. I began to notice small changes in Melissa's behavior. There were moments when she would hurriedly slide her phone into her purse as I entered a room, or when her smile would falter for just an instant while discussing our day. Each subtle gesture, once an expression of a loving wife, now struck me as a potential sign of deception. One particularly long, rain-soaked evening, as I sat in the study surrounded by scattered notes and printed receipts, I felt the full weight of betrayal pressing down on me. The rhythmic patter of rain on the window blended with the sound of my racing heart, and I couldn't help but wonder, had I been so blinded by love and routine that I had ignored the red flags? Every memory of our time together, a shared laugh during a family dinner, the tender way she used to look at me when we were alone, now took on a bittersweet tone, marred by the realization that something was hidden beneath the surface. The thought of confronting Melissa filled me with a mixture of dread and determination. I wrestled with the decision. Should I let the evidence fester until it becomes undeniable, or should I approach her immediately with the cold, hard facts? The latter terrified me. What if her reaction shattered any hope of reconciliation? Yet, the prospect of living in perpetual uncertainty, of never knowing the full extent of her deception, was equally unbearable. I began to rehearse the confrontation in my mind, weighing every word, every possible response, until the lines between anger and sorrow blurred into a single, desperate need for truth. I confided in a close friend, someone who had been with me through both the triumphs and the trials of our marriage, without revealing too much, but enough to let him know that something was terribly wrong. In the dead of night, over whispered phone calls, I described the strange receipt, the subsequent anomalies in our bank statements, and the creeping suspicion that had taken root in my heart. His voice, steady and filled with quiet concern, reassured me that I deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. "You have every right to feel betrayed," he said softly, "and you have every right to ask for an explanation." His words were a small balm to my wounded pride, yet they also steeled me further for the inevitable confrontation. As the days wore on, I continued to document everything with an obsessive fervor. My digital dossier grew thicker with each passing transaction, each unexplained expense, and each piece of behavioral evidence that confirmed what I had long suspected. The simple dinner receipt, a seemingly innocuous piece of paper, had opened a Pandora's box of hidden truths, and with each new revelation, I felt both my heart breaking and my resolve hardening. I realized that our shared life was a delicate tapestry, one that could be unraveled by the slightest thread of deceit. I started noticing a peculiar pattern. The timing of the suspicious charges often coincided with the times when Melissa had claimed to be out for errands or working late. There were subtle consistencies, the same restaurant names, the same taxi services, and even recurring online orders, that painted a coherent picture of a secret life. It was as if every detail had been meticulously planned and executed, a silent symphony of deception that had been playing out under my unsuspecting gaze. In the solitude of those nights, as I sat with the glow of my computer and the weight of my thoughts, I began to question my own complacency. Had I been too trusting? Had I let the comfort of routine blind me to the hidden undercurrents in our relationship? Each unanswered question fanned the flames of my despair, but it also ignited within me a fierce determination to uncover every detail, to peel back the layers of half-truths until I reached the heart of the matter. The more I dug, the more I realized that the dinner receipt was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a much larger, more systemic betrayal that had slowly eroded the foundation of our marriage. As I meticulously compiled my findings, I felt a bitter mix of sorrow and righteous indignation. Every line in my digital dossier was a reminder that the trust one had placed in our marriage had been so deeply violated that nothing could ever restore it to its former glory. I questioned every memory of laughter, every whispered secret that had once given our lives meaning. The evidence, cold and unyielding, painted a picture of a relationship built on carefully guarded lies, a picture that now demanded to be confronted. By the end of that tumultuous week, my resolve had crystallized into a single, inescapable truth. I could no longer live in a state of perpetual uncertainty, haunted by a dinner receipt that told the story of a hidden life. The digital dossier was complete, and every new piece of evidence, every subtle behavioral cue, had joined together to form a tapestry of betrayal that could not be ignored. I knew that the moment was coming when I would have to confront Melissa with the truth, an act that promised to shatter the remnants of our once perfect union and force us both to face the painful reality of our hidden lives. Now, as I sit in the quiet solitude of my study, the pages of my journal spread out before me and the digital dossier glowing on my laptop, I feel the immense weight of the truth pressing down on my chest. The evidence is undeniable, and each detail is a stark reminder that our life together was a fragile illusion, built on trust that has since been shattered by secrets. I prepare myself for the confrontation that will soon come, a moment that will force us both to confront the hidden lies that have poisoned our marriage. The path ahead is uncertain and fraught with pain, but I know that I must walk it, step by agonizing step, in order to reclaim my identity and rebuild a future defined not by deception, but by the raw, unfiltered truth. In the cold light of a gray autumn morning, every heartbeat pounded like a drum of impending change. I had spent the last few days compiling my evidence, tracing every errant location, every anomalous charge, every whisper of deception that led me to that fateful hotel room. Now, as I sat alone in the stillness of our kitchen, I realized that the moment of reckoning was here, a moment that would tear down the carefully constructed facade of our life and force us both to confront a truth too painful to ignore. Every word, every detail, every silent secret was etched into my mind like a scar, and I knew that nothing could ever restore the innocence of our past. The confrontation had been brewing in my soul for weeks. I recalled the day I noticed the mysterious gym membership charge on our bank statement. The single transaction that should have been inconsequential had become a harbinger of betrayal. I remember how I rationalized it at first. Perhaps it was a simple error, a misdirected fee that had nothing to do with us. But as the days passed and I began to notice subtle changes in Melissa's behavior, the way she clutched her phone, the evasiveness in her responses, and, most hauntingly, the persistent scent of cologne that she wore every time she returned home, I realized that something was profoundly wrong. My gut, once so sure of our unity, now twisted with the certainty that I had been living a lie. That lie led me, inevitably, to the hotel room. The evidence from the tracking app confirmed that while I was home on many evenings, Melissa was elsewhere, checking into a modest yet stylish hotel on the outskirts of town, a place that was a far cry from our familiar neighborhood gym. In that hotel room, I witnessed the undeniable proof of a secret life. The dim light, the subtle traces of intimacy, the personal belongings left carelessly as if to hide nothing, it all converged into a painful tableau that shattered my trust completely. I remember the moment I stepped back from the door, the images of what I saw seared into my mind, and a tidal wave of sorrow and fury overwhelmed me. I left that room with a heavy heart and a resolve as cold as the night air. Over the next few days, I lived in a state of agonizing introspection. Every moment in our once happy home felt tainted by the knowledge of Melissa's deception. I would sit at the kitchen table with my coffee growing cold as I reread the bank statements and scroll through the digital dossier I had meticulously assembled. Each receipt, every tracking log, every photograph was a brutal reminder that the life I believed in was built on carefully maintained illusions. The more I pieced together the hidden threads of her secret life, the more I began to question every single memory, every dinner we shared, every whispered conversation before sleep, every gentle touch that once promised forever. I reached a breaking point when I could no longer bear the heavy silence that filled our evenings. One chilly, overcast afternoon, I gathered every scrap of evidence and prepared myself for the confrontation that I knew was inevitable. My hands were steady, though my heart throbbed with both anger and sorrow. I arranged the printed screenshots, the annotated bank statements, and the tracking logs neatly on the dining table, the very table where, for so many years, we had celebrated birthdays and holidays, shared laughter and dreams. Now it was transformed into a stage for a truth that would shatter all illusions. When Melissa arrived home that day, I greeted her with a calm that belied the storm raging inside me. Her eyes, once warm and familiar, now flickered with a guarded uncertainty. "Melissa," I began, my voice quiet yet resolute, "we need to talk." I gestured for her to sit and pointed to the folder on the table. For a long, agonizing moment, silence stretched between us, a silence so thick it seemed to press down on every corner of the room. Finally, her gaze fell on the evidence. I could see the shock in her eyes, a flicker of panic that quickly gave way to a hesitant sadness. I didn't know how to tell you," she murmured, her voice barely audible, as if she was speaking through a veil of regret. I pressed gently but firmly, "Then explain this, Melissa. Explain why there's a gym membership you never used, why our bank statements show a dinner for two on nights when I was home, and why you've been checking into hotels when you told me you were working late." My words were measured, not shouted, every question a quiet demand for the truth that had long been hidden. The tension in the room was palpable. Her eyes darted around, as if searching for a safe place to hide, and then she broke down. "It started with loneliness," she whispered, tears welling up as her facade crumbled. "I felt invisible, like our lives had become too routine. I needed a spark, something new. And then I met someone who made me feel alive again." Her confession was delivered in fragments, interspersed with desperate apologies and broken excuses that did nothing to mend the gaping wound in my heart. Every word she uttered was a betrayal, a confirmation that the shared life I had cherished was nothing more than an illusion. I listened in a hollow daze, my mind racing through memories of love turned sour. Every dinner, every gentle smile, every quiet promise now felt like a carefully constructed lie. I demanded details, wanting to know how long this had been going on, who the other person was, and why she never confided in me. But her answers were as fractured as the trust we once had. She could only offer vague explanations, each one more unsatisfactory than the last. The confrontation was a slow, agonizing dismantling of the life I had built. As her confessions poured out, a heavy silence settled between us, one filled with the unspeakable pain of lost trust and shattered dreams. The vibrant tapestry of our shared past disintegrated before my eyes, each memory now stained with the bitterness of betrayal. I felt an overwhelming mix of anger and profound sadness, my heart breaking with every word, yet also a strange resolve beginning to form within me, a determination to reclaim my identity, even if it meant letting go of the life we once knew. That night, as I lay awake in our darkened home, I could not escape the echo of her betrayal. The sound of my own breathing was a painful reminder of the love that had been so thoroughly undermined. I wandered from room to room, the familiar spaces now alien and oppressive, each one a silent witness to the lies that had been woven into the very fabric of our existence. I clutched the evidence as if it were a lifeline, a tangible record of a truth I could no longer deny. In the solitude of that overwhelming darkness, I realized that the time had come to let the truth set me free, even if that truth meant facing a future where everything I once believed was gone. In the weeks that followed, the public fallout of our unraveling became painfully apparent. Friends who had once celebrated our union now offered me pitying glances. Family gatherings were marred by whispered conversations and sideways looks. Our community, so tight-knit and full of shared history, now buzzed with the scandal of a marriage built on deception. I felt the crushing weight of public judgment, each whispered word a reminder of the trust one had lost. Yet, in the midst of that isolation, I also began to find a small, stubborn ember of hope, a realization that despite the devastation, I still had the power to rebuild. I sought refuge in therapy, where gentle guidance helped me process the raw emotions that had threatened to engulf me. I learned that while the pain of betrayal might never completely vanish, it could become the catalyst for a profound personal transformation. Your worth is not defined by someone else's deception, my therapist reminded me, urging me to reclaim the pieces of myself that had been buried under layers of heartbreak. Slowly, I began to understand that this painful chapter, however devastating, could be the beginning of a journey toward renewal. I started to reconnect with old friends, to open up about the truth of my shattered marriage in a way that was both honest and healing. Their support was a balm to my wounded spirit, a reminder that I was not alone in my suffering, and that many had risen from the depths of betrayal to build lives defined by resilience and authenticity. I began to explore new hobbies, to immerse myself in creative pursuits that allowed me to express the tumult of my emotions in art and poetry. Every small step, every hesitant smile, was a step away from the darkness that had once seemed all-consuming. Now, as I sit here in the early light of a new day, I reflect on the journey that has brought me to this uncertain threshold. The confrontation with Melissa was the most excruciating moment of my life, a moment when the truth, so brutally exposed, forced both of us to confront the consequences of a love built on hidden lies. The pain remains, a scar etched deeply into my heart, but it no longer controls me. Instead, it serves as a stark reminder that even when the foundations of trust are shattered, there is within us the capacity to rebuild and to redefine what love truly means. As I move forward, I choose to embrace the future with cautious optimism. I have learned that forgiveness is not about forgetting the past, it's about freeing oneself from the endless cycle of bitterness and despair. The journey to healing is long, filled with setbacks and moments of raw vulnerability, but each step I take brings me closer to a future where I can live authentically, without the weight of deceit crushing my spirit. The road ahead is uncertain, and I know there will be days when the memories of that fateful night will surge up unbidden, a tidal wave of emotion that threatens to drown me in sorrow. But I have also learned that within that darkness, there lies the potential for a new beginning, a chance to rise from the ashes of betrayal, to reclaim my identity, and to rebuild my life piece by piece. This is my rebirth, a transformation forged in the crucible of deception and tempered by the slow, steady light of truth. Though my heart bears the scars of a love betrayed, I now see them as symbols of my resilience. They are the reminders that even when the most cherished illusions shatter, there remains within each of us an indomitable strength to forge a new path. I will continue to walk this road, one cautious step at a time, embracing every lesson, every tear, and every small victory along the way. In the soft glow of morning, as I watch the sun rise over a world forever changed, I find within myself the courage to face what lies ahead. I no longer allow the shadow of Melissa's deception to define my every moment. Instead, I choose to build a future on the bedrock of honesty, a future where I trust again, love again, and live again. The journey will be long, and the scars will remain, but I now know that I am capable of transformation. I am a man reborn from the wreckage of betrayal, determined to reclaim the light of truth and to craft a life that is as real and resilient as the dawn breaking through the darkness. And so, as the day unfolds with its promise of a new beginning, I step forward with a heart that has been shattered yet is slowly piecing itself back together. I carry with me the painful memories of that night, the dinner receipt, the unexplained charges, the hidden hotel room, and I transform them into a testament of survival and renewal. My story, once defined by the perfect illusion of a shared life, is now being rewritten with every step I take, every breath I draw, and every hope that rises with the morning light. I am determined to build a future where the echoes of betrayal no longer haunt me, where trust can be reborn from the fragments of what was lost, and where I can finally embrace the promise of a life defined by truth, resilience, and the unwavering power of hope.